All right. Hey, welcome to another episode of Coach P's Perspective. I'm pumped, man. Today I have Coach Martin Rooney with us. Coach Rooney is a coach, author, strength conditioning specialist, martial artist. He's worked with multiple UFC fighters, NFL teams. Like literally, I could go through his bio and I'll put it in the show notes, but it is enormous. So, Coach, man, thank you for being on.
My pleasure, Chad. And for everybody that just heard that, just remember everything he said took me about 30 years. So it sounds like a lot of stuff, but if you do one cool thing a year and you got 30 great things at the end, in some ways it's not as big as it could be. But it is my pleasure to be here. I'm ready to fire everybody up.
Yeah, and that's something, I very first heard you on the Todd Durkin show, and you and TD, man, are both like just balls of fire. And I listened to the episode, and I think I went and ran like 10 miles. And so, let's start here so our listeners know. Tell us about your background, man. Like, where'd you grow up? How did you get into sports? Maybe some of the sports that you did.
Yeah, well, hey, I'll make it quick so everybody hears it a little bit. And a lot of this stuff hopefully is online somewhere too. But what I don't always say, I usually say, hey, I grew up in New Jersey. I played a lot of different sports. And we talked offline. Hey, I wrestled, ice hockey, but track and field became the big sport for me. But what I don't talk about a lot is people sometimes wonder, hey, who was my greatest coach? And I had this incredible junior high coach that found me and developed me. But really before that, I sometimes forgot until now, it's my mom. And my mom was a physical education teacher. And, and a coach. And man, she raised me. You eat right, you get enough sleep, you train hard, you lift weights. And that got ingrained into me that I just thought it was normal, that I never really realized, holy cow, she was laying the bedrock of who I am today. And I still do all those things, like I get up, I got to have breakfast. I go to bed, I got to get 8 hours. And so she built that foundation. This other coach found me. And then, I went to college as a javelin thrower, then got degrees in exercise science and physical therapy. But then I made the U.S. bobsled team and got to live at the Olympic Training Center, represent the U.S. and wear the stars and bars. And that was a really, really incredible experience, but really showed me that I wanted to be involved in fitness and sport. But when I came home and my Olympic dream was over, I became a therapist. So I was a physical therapist for a handful of years, but I always had this calling that I knew there was something else for me, some way that I could impact more people. And what's weird is I started chasing stuff. And one of those things I started chasing, a buddy of mine took me in his backyard. We were wrestling and he started choking me out. And I said, dude, what's going on? I used to whoop up on you. And he said, oh, there's this Gracie guy in New York City. And man, he just got here from Brazil. You got to go there with me. And I went and became one of Renzo Gracie's original students back in the late 90s. And, like one of my first training partners was Matt Serra. And he was just getting started. John Danaher, just getting started. These guys were white and blue belts then, who are now legends of the sport. And Renzo took a liking, and then I got an opportunity to help share my strength and conditioning knowledge with them. And that led me on this incredible path that, I got involved in sports and strength and conditioning. I helped pioneer the Parisi Speed School. We had hundreds of locations across the U.S. And then that also led to Training for Warriors, which is my adult program that's now used all over the world. And so that was 25 years and hopefully a couple of minutes. But it's been a tremendous adventure along the way. But maybe the biggest takeaway that everybody should have got from that is the best move I ever made in my life was chasing my passion. And it's nothing against therapy, but if I had remained a therapist, we wouldn't be talking right now. And I probably wouldn't be the fired up guy that everybody knows. And I definitely wouldn't have impacted the people I impacted. And it was only, I think, because I had the guts to chase what I loved where everybody else told me I was nuts. And maybe this is a good time to say it too, because I forget about it. But hey, everybody that's listening to this, depending on when you listen, I know we're still going through this pandemic. Hey, it's been one of the greatest challenges I've ever had. And it's pushed my leadership skills and my mental fortitude to another level. But I want to say, hey, this is also a time when everybody gets a greater chance to reflect, see what they are passionate about. And maybe if your job has changed or it could change, now might be the greatest stepping stone for somebody to take towards that passion and change their life. And, you know, again, it's maybe that silver lining in some of the stuff that has happened. But I also want to say, hey, I hope everybody is safe and well listening to this. And depending on how you've been impacted, I hope everybody is staying strong too.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about what you do, Coach. I mean, first off, like, you're a coach at heart. Second, you know, I'm a big believer. Principles are principles. They apply everywhere once you understand them and know how to apply them. And, you know, you always take all your principles, whether it's strength conditioning, martial arts, whatever, and then apply them to other areas of life. You're like one of the masters of doing that. And something I really appreciate big time. So,
well, I appreciate that. And I don't know, I take those, you know, a word like master, I don't take lightly. And I guess in my head, I still feel like I'm 21 years old. So maybe that's important too. I'm not. Hey, for everybody listening, I'm a handful of months away from 50. Now, if you're listening to me, that might be hard to believe, right? You might say, wait a minute, that cat, he must be 25 years old. Can't be, but it's, I don't know. I think that's what life is all about, right? It gives you this series of challenges and you got to master them. And if you master enough of them, you're going to start to see patterns develop, like you said, whether principles or values, and they become universal regardless of what you do. And I've been on the hunt for those for a long time and have tested myself to see how I apply them. And I don't know, I think that's what the great journey of this whole thing is all about, right? So I appreciate that a lot. Yeah.
With your martial arts background, like you said, mastery is not something you take lightly. And you're a black belt, but you still have that white belt mentality where, like, I'm hungry and I'm always ready to learn more. But at the same time, like, I want to be a black belt at everything I do. So again, man, it's a great quality to have. Now let's just touch on real quick. You know, you mentioned your strength conditioning. Because I mean, you're one of these guys that people that study strength conditioning have kind of been like a guru in the sport, or kind of been a guru in the fitness world for a long time. And you mentioned your mom, you know, being a PE teacher, but what really drove your passion to jump into strength training, and just a little about that journey?
Yeah. Well, hey, this is something else I don't talk about a lot. Hey, here's something I should also say. My dad was an Olympic caliber rower too. I don't want to shortchange him if he listens to this, because I'm going to share this, and he follows all, you know, he's my biggest fan. So he'll rip me if I don't mention him, but he was also a business guy. But yeah, he was a great athlete in his own right too. And here's why I'm bringing that up is, I think this is a common story for a lot of people. Again, I grew up in New Jersey in the 70s and 80s. And hey, bullying, you know, that was commonplace, man. And in my neighborhood, you know, we were in a blue collar town. Hey, I would get beat up a bunch, you know, and there was this punk, and sorry I say that now about him, but like there was this guy, and he was older, and he just beat up a lot of kids in the neighborhood, you know? And one day that had happened to me, and my dad came home. My mom told him about it. He knew I was upstairs in my room, down and out. And I won't forget it. He came upstairs, he said, let's go. And I didn't know where we were going. And we went down in the basement. He had these old sand plate weights and some bars. I don't even know where we got these things. Stuff you had to screw on the clips to keep the weight on there. And that was my first weightlifting session, man, you know? And I think the lesson was, what he tried to show me is, if you stay weak, you're going to get punked forever. But if you get strong, man, you're in more control of your destiny. And I won't forget, I could barely move the bench press bar. You know, now as I lift with my daughters, I saw some of that, and it reminded me of that. And I'll say this, from that day, I have not missed three days without lifting weights. And that's 40 years ago, you know? So I got 40 years straight under my belt, man. I don't miss, whether I'm sick, whether I'm hurt. I am training. And I will say this, that as I built that physical strength, it built my mental strength. And, people didn't take advantage of me anymore either, which was So again, there's something to be said, but that was the root of my passion. But it started with me lifting with a couple of buddies in the neighborhood and reading muscle and fitness magazines and really doing more like bicep work than like anything else. I'll be honest about it. It wasn't like I was doing the smartest training, but I was training. And that physical stuff allowed me to always succeed in sports or endeavors that I picked up. So that cornerstone became strength. And then that became my passion. And I just dug deeper and deeper and deeper into it between seminars with so many people. You know, that's the thing too. You said, hey, you know, you're this guru. Hey, before I ever got to be the guru, man, I went to see the guru, right? Yeah. Like, and I would do whatever it took to get books, which were hard back then. This is pre-internet. This is all that stuff. I would just get around people and try to learn what they were doing and try it out myself too. And I think that's important. I don't think you need to be a world record holder in lifting, but you know, hey, I got deeply involved with powerlifting, but you got to study it and you got to have a passion for it. Right. And that I guess was like my superhero origin story, which I think is common for everybody. It's like you meet with this tragedy or this catastrophe, and then you rise from it by becoming something. So somehow in my head, there's always this thing that I got to train because I like no one's ever gonna, push me around again in a weird way, giving a little psychology behind it. Right.
Yeah. That just kind of sparked the thought in my head. So I have 4 kiddos, but my boys are 8 and 5, and, they'll do, they come up and they're around our wrestling team all the time, and they're up there when we're working out. And so, but my dad, I had to do 100 push-ups a day since I was 5, and not 100 at once, but 100 push-ups a day since I was 5. And he was a great coach. And I was in the weight room with them, and I was probably had like 10-pound or 5-pound dumbbells. I thought I was lifting, but whatever he did, I did, and same thing, Muscle and Fitness magazine. I had like Flex Wheeler posters on my wall, and so I absolutely love it. And outside of wrestling, when it comes to sports, man, strength training is one of my greatest passions too. So I feel that. And I wanted to know your background.
Yeah, well, maybe something I didn't say too, and I don't want to also shortchange this. So I got 4 kids too. I got 4 daughters, so my house is a war zone right now, as you can imagine, because 3 of them are teenagers now. And but my oldest, and this might be my proudest coaching thing. So a lot of people ask me, they say, hey, you've trained the Gracies, you worked with Frankie Edgar, Jim Miller, most fights in UFC history. Cause I had just cornered him at 2 fights during this pandemic. Yeah. You worked with, you were coach with the Jets and the Giants. You sent all these guys to the NFL. Who's your greatest athlete, hey, a few weeks ago, and this has been tough on everybody. A few weeks ago at National Signing Day, my daughter signed her letter of intent, to Notre Dame for track and field. And that kid, I've never trained anybody for 18 years straight. Yeah. But just like you said, I got pictures of her. She's 1 year old, already flexing up, doing push-ups, 3 years old, doing chin-ups. And our training time together and what we've done, maybe somebody would think, your dad is crazy or I'm a crazy dad, but no, man, like they gave us this set of skills. I think everybody's crazy that wouldn't do that. I think it's crazy to let your kids sit on the couch, watch SpongeBob and eat whatever they want. Right. Where, I don't know. I took it as soon I'll be handing her off and then it'll be up to her. But now each one of my younger kids, we're also staying on that. And it's the greatest time that I've ever spent. So I hope you see it too, that your dad doing that for you, it wasn't like, hey, he's a mean dad or pushing you. He's giving you what he's got that he knows will help you succeed, but yeah, so maybe that's something important for everybody here too, is my life was dominated mostly that I would spend most of my day with male athletes, and then I would come home to a house full of females. So yeah. I've had the dichotomy, right? It was like, I got to be one guy and then I would come home and have to be another guy, but the training was always consistent. And that's been her secret, is how she made her dreams come true. Is even during this pandemic, man, we did not stop training. Like we actually doubled down. When this all went down, she was scared. And I said, we're going to double down right now. We're going to train harder. We'll shoot videos. If there's no meets, we'll make up our own meets. And we just kept videoing and sending to these coaches and everything else. And it happened, man. And it is my proudest coaching moment when I went up, she called me up to her room. She was crying in her room and she handed me her phone and I didn't know what was wrong. You know, is it over? What's going on? And it was a text from the coach and it said, "Welcome to the Fighting Irish, Notre Dame." And man, that was, you know, I've had a handful of great hugs in my life. That was one of the best ones, you know, and again, all comes back that none of it happens if it wasn't just this consistent, nonstop hard work.
Yeah, that's first off, congratulations to you and your daughter. Yeah, that's amazing, man. And my daughters are 14 and 11, so I feel that too.
Yeah, you know what, you know, it's, you know, yeah, because all of a sudden they used to be all my little best buds, and like, man, now the doors are sometimes locked. I gotta like get in there and, hey, what's going on in here, you know? So yeah, they're pushing me around, man. It's tough.
Yeah. All right. So tell me a little bit about Training for Warriors. So I know that it's a big part of your life. So what exactly is it? What all are you doing there?
Yeah, well, Training for Warriors, as I mentioned, hey, you know, another big part of my origin story was Bill Parisi and the Parisi Speed School, you know, and is, you know, still where, you know, he and I met on a plane flying to a seminar. By the end of that plane trip, I knew I was leaving therapy and I was going to chase this dream of sports performance. And, you know, we kind of pioneered it with kids and it caught on, and that got us to the pros. So I wouldn't have had the NFL guys and a lot of my resume without it, you know, but where Training for Warriors was born was because of all the work I was doing with fighters. I started writing about it. Like, I was the only guy. There was nobody in the late 90s was training mixed martial artists for combat with physical training. And so I hit the right thing at the right time, right? Like, if anybody's ever read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, I think I was an outlier in the sports performance space. And then I was an outlier in the NFL combine space. I was an outlier in the MMA space. Like, I was right place, right time. You know, if I'm 2 or 3 years after, it doesn't go down. And so again, part of it, I'd love to say it was all me. And part of it was timing and being in the right place at the right time. And because I was working with them, Gracie Magazine said, "Hey man, can you start writing an article a month for us?" And I'd never been a writer or done any of that, but yeah, it was helping me to pioneer what I was doing, right? It helped me to crystallize, like, what are we doing here? And I would have to do more research about not just strength training, but metabolic training. And really, because I was also training in jiu-jitsu and judo, I was really understanding the physical demands of the sport and how training, I couldn't train my guys like football players. It was totally different. Or, you know, I couldn't train my guys like, you know, basketball players or baseball players. Was different. And those articles turned into, I wrote a self-published book called Training for Warriors, right? And that book became such a hot seller. One day I got called to New York City to one of the biggest publishing houses, HarperCollins. And I walked in and they had the book on their desk and they said, "Dude, you want to do this one for real? Like, you want to do this thing for real? We know who you are. We see what you're doing." And I was like, "Yeah." And meaning I had no agent, no nothing, didn't shop them. And all of a sudden I got a book deal. And that book, Training for Warriors, now has sold hundreds of thousands of copies, which is big. You know, that may not sound like much to people. 99% of books don't sell 1,000 copies in their lifetime. And it got printed in half a dozen languages around the world. And then people started calling. I started getting these emails. "Hey, can you come and speak? Can you come and teach this system?" Which I didn't really know I had a system, you know what I mean? And, but then I started teaching, which that became courses. And then the courses at that time, things were starting to get called seminars. First it was clinics, then it was workshops, then it was courses, then it was certifications. And then at one of them in Europe, this dude says, "Hey man, can I have the logos? I want to run this thing." And I was like, "No, you can't have the logos. That's not how it works." And then I realized people want this. And then it became a license, and it became a licensing program right around, you know, before CrossFit, but like the model CrossFit was using. They were a license, you put them in gyms, and Training for Warriors started to accelerate. And at our zenith, and unfortunately the pandemic has really, as you can appreciate, hurt the fitness industry these last like almost 11 months. But at our zenith, we were at 300 locations. Tens of thousands of people were doing the program every day. And it wasn't fighters anymore. It was weekend warriors, actually more women than men, in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And this system now is inspiring people all over the world. And yeah, it is. So if I were to say what is my day job, I am the leader of Training for Warriors. I design all the programming for all the people around the world. And where I've spent my most time during this pandemic caged in my house is now I'm no longer on planes every weekend. I'm doing everything I can to help my people, get through this and survive. And so that's what I do on a daily basis. But the Training for Warriors are, it's my pride and joy. And when I get an email from somebody that it helped them, whether they lost weight or they don't take medication anymore, or they're off the bottle, it's been the most rewarding thing that I never saw coming either. Mm-hmm. So that's something I'd like to talk about. Is it happened organically because it was the right thing to do. I never said, hey, I'm going to work with the Gracies where everybody says I'm nuts and then someday have this program. It happened because it's what the world needed and we did it, and that's the kind of Training for Warriors history and story. And now this has been the biggest challenge for it. And I think this is going to define us a little bit of where we go as now, as at the time of this shooting, depending on when people hear this, we're in this second lockdown, and where so many of the countries around the world, man, it's been so difficult. Imagine your gym has been shut down for 11 months, but you still got to pay rent, and and your people have either left or they've lost their jobs. How do you do it? And that's why I think I said earlier why it's taken my leadership to the next level and pushed me beyond where I thought I could go. But I'm doing it because I'm trying to help our people.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of the principles that you have, a lot of the things that you do, these aren't just theories. These are things that you've tested over time. Yeah. And so a lot of, and we're going to jump into one of your books real quick here in a minute, but a lot of the things that you've done as a coach also apply to leadership in every other area that you're at right now, that you're involved in. And it's helping people, right now. I mean, what a better time for people to, and maybe they have to make some sort of shift or some sort of, pivot's kind of the hot word right now, but pivot in their life or whatever. But, what a better time to be involved with something like Training for Warriors and something that can truly help people out in their lives every day. But let me now jump over to this, man. So I'm a pretty avid reader. I can't say I'm a great reader. It's funny. I mean, I'm an author and I read a lot. I did not read a lot growing up. It was one of those things when I became an adult and I want to study the areas I want to be great at. I read a lot, right? So I want to learn in those areas. But being a pretty avid reader and being a coach, of course, I've read a lot of coaching books and leadership books. And heck, I'll read business books, right? Because I want to take their principles and apply them to what we do. But this summer, I grabbed this book, Coach to Coach, which is a book that you wrote. And, those who have listened to or maybe read John Gordon books, things like that, sort of like in parable type formats and story formats, I get the book and I read it, and it's one of those type of books, and I knock it out quick. But I told you before we started recording here, like I just looked back through my notes and I took so many notes from this book. And I don't say this lightly, man. I would put it in my top 10 books of all time. And I'm not a guy that goes back and rereads a lot of books. It is in like the reread section, right? So I want to go back and read this over again so that I can take even more notes. So tell me about Coach to Coach. Like, how did the story come about, the process, and then, man, any lessons that you want to share? I mean, we don't have to give away the whole book because everybody needs to buy it and read it.
Yeah.
But tell me about Coach to Coach.
Well, and it's funny. I got it right here. And we were talking because, I'll even say this before I go. Some of the stuff that I'm most proud of is on the back cover, the first name is Dan Gable, right? And he said, hey, for great performances in your profession and family, you got to study this book. And that was like big, I don't know if, how many, hopefully a lot of wrestlers are listening, but the age I am, and to have him say that, incredible.
Yeah.
But the story of the book, and look at this, which I have right here. And the book is just came out in German last week because it's been going so big here. And what you said about it, you ready for this? I wrote it already in mind that what you said is what people were going to say. They're going to say, I'm going to read it, but I'm going to read it quick. I really enjoyed it, but it's going to be chock full of stuff. And it's going to be something I'm going to go back to like once a year, like my favorite movie or my favorite song, and read it again. And that was the thought process I went into before I started writing it. Mm. And, but for everybody listening, you heard it's a story, right? And that was a departure for me. I'd never written in conversation form. I've never written a story before, but I knew after teaching so many coaching courses and so many people saying, you got to write a book on this, you should do a book on this, it never felt right. You know what I mean, Chad? Like you can't, coaching is not, oh, if they do this, now you do that. Like coaching, because of people are so different and the coach is so different, and there are so many different ways to skin the cat that can work, right? Like you can have different coaching styles. I wanted to go after the principles, like you said, but I realized you can't just lay it out in a boring textbook. I got to do it in, how about a story? You know, I said, man, I'm a good storyteller. How about a story? And that was the idea behind it. And then this time I didn't have a publisher and I didn't have anybody knocking down my door for the book. And I just sat down and wrote it. And man, it's interesting because you got the Rocky picture behind you. Do you know the story of Sylvester Stallone and the Rocky screenplay?
Yes. Yep. Amazing.
Meaning how he wrote it in a weekend. Like he saw that fight with Wepner, was so inspired. He wrote it in a weekend and he just knew he had something. And he didn't quit till he was the guy in the movie and all the other stuff. That's how much he believed in it. Well, I wrote this thing, and when I typed the last word, same feeling, man. I knew I had something. I was like, oh my gosh, this has flown out of me. I got something here. And I sent it to, you know, you mentioned John Gordon. I said, what's the best publishing house for this style of book? And I sent it right to those publishers. I didn't know anybody. And a day and a half later, they write back. They say, this is one of the best ones we've read. We got to have it. Yeah. And then they said, and we want to fast track it. We want this thing out in a couple of months, not in a year. And boom, it was done. The only challenge was it came out 2 days after we went into quarantine for the first time. So I think that kind of hurt its exposure, but 10,000 books already out there. Now it's coming out in other languages. And I couldn't be more proud of it because what you've said, and if you go to like Amazon, which it's on sale right now for the holidays, I guess, there's almost 400 5-star reviews from all over the world, where that's more reviews than all my other books combined. So, and it's only been out a few months. So it is affecting people like I wanted it to. And it's not just if you're a sport coach or not. Like you said, if you're a leader, if you're a teacher, if you're a mom or dad, you got to read this book. And I'll say this, because I'm just brain dumping here. Everything in the book is a story, but everything in the book really happened. And that's why it was so easy for me to write. Yeah. So some people say, hey, are you that guy, Brian? And I'm like, hey, sometimes I'm that guy, Brian. Hey, is that guy Marcus real? Yeah, like he's a composite of a few athletes that I really trained and that I worked with. Hey, the wife, did those things really happen? Yeah, those things really did happen, and all the troubles that were in there. And so it's kind of like it's this story, but in a weird way, all of it was based off real stuff too. So it was a pleasure to write. And, but even more to hear how it's affected people. Right. So that's a little bit of it, right. You know, the origin of the book.
Yeah. Now, and I didn't know that, you know, that those were all based off of, I mean, I knew the principles were things that you had experienced and lived, but I didn't know those were on the basis. So that's awesome to hear. Now I have a ton of quotes off of it, but being a coach, you know, this one I really love. So it says, a coach gets you where you want to go when you can't get there yourself. Yeah. And, you know, one of my favorite definitions of a coach, you know, they talk about literally like a horse-drawn carriage. A coach, you know, takes a person from one place to the next. So you being a coach, man, just what are a couple of the principles or a couple of the things that came out of this book that people need to know right now? Just to draw them in a little more, because like I said, I don't want to give everything away. They need to read this book, man.
Yeah, well, you know, in there are all the principles, and they're outlined really cool, where I think everybody, that was by design too, that you're going to walk away and you're going to get the message. But if anybody's felt it a little bit, I think the biggest thing I could say, I already said it, right? I talked about today, the secret of why I'm who I am and where I am is a combination of passion, enthusiasm, and you could also throw in their purpose. So maybe one big idea, and that's in the book, if you remember it, is I said, your true greatness is going to come out in, it doesn't matter, coach or whatever it is you do, it's going to come out when that passion intersects with your purpose.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe I'm supposed to do. Like, why am I in the zone right now talking about this? This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, so I'm hoping, and remember, whoever is listening to this, this is for you. Like, I'm not here to talk about me. I'm trying to drop something so that you pick it up and you go help somebody, or it makes you better in some way. And that's what I'm supposed to do. And so what does that mean? I'm a coach. And because I also love coaching, or I like coaching the things I coach, that intersects my passion with my purpose. And that's where the great stuff comes out. So I think the biggest challenge for people is they usually are passionate about something, but that's not what they end up doing for their job. So they do this job they don't like so they can get some money to do the thing they do really like every once in a while on the weekends or something. And they live a life that's not inspiring, and then they don't inspire anybody else. So my challenge to everybody is, and it takes guts. Like I said it before, it's weird. It's weird that it shouldn't take courage to chase your passion, but it does, because the world usually will try to tell you not to. But the whole thing is, if you know what it is, and I think most people do, I think they've known their whole life what they really love and what they're passionate about. And then they just never, I don't know, they never had the courage or the fortitude to chase it. But what I'm saying is chase it and then figure out what it is you're supposed to be doing. And if you can get paid to do that, man, I don't care how much money you make, but you're going to live a great life. Right. And actually the money will come, right? Like if I would have told people in the 90s, hey, I'm going to work with MMA guys and try to be a hand fighting consultant for the NFL, and that's how I'm going to feed my family, people would have laughed in my face. But instead, I chased my passion, and all those other things happened because then I became a very rare person in the whole world. And the world finds those people, right? So that might be another message in there. It's like, hey, if you're really great at what you do, the world's going to find you, and you're not going to have to worry about a lot of other stuff.
Love it, man. Love it. So saying that always reminds me, a lot of people know the story of David and Goliath, but David was also a phenomenal musician and on the lyre, which kind of like a harp type thing. And, there was a point where the king says like, hey, I need somebody that plays this instrument. And they say, hey, there's this guy that's excellent at it. Right. And so they bring in David, and he plays before the king and becomes like but whenever you get really good at something, like the world will find you, people will know. So yeah, I love that, coach. All right. Now let me kind of flip real quick. I love to interview high performers. And that's what you are in every area of your life. What are a few of your non-negotiable daily habits that you do to stay on top of your game, man? If you could share those with us.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, and I think I've hinted at them already. So, and my non-negotiables are what that word means. So first off, everybody has to understand that word. I call them either your expendables or your non-negotiables, right? Like, meaning most people, unfortunately, the non-negotiables that I have are expendable for everybody else. And that's why I believe they don't succeed. So here are some non-negotiables. Number one, sleep. Like my non-negotiable is sleep. My family knows it. They're around me. My wife hates it, but like, hey, I need 8 hours and 20 minutes. Like, I don't need 8. I don't need 9. 6 or 4 is not going to work. And then I'm not me. It's 8:20. And I studied it. I tested my clock. I know where I'm at, right? That's how I wake up without an alarm clock and I'm on, right? And, it's interesting because most people, that's expendable. They stay up all night watching TV, or they do other things, and they say, and they feel like they're missing out. And then they just are chronically sleep deprived, and then everything else falls apart and they can't explain it. Number 2, man, I'm going to eat right. Like I eat good food. Like I got it. I don't know. Like food is medicine to me. That's how I look at it. Of course, do I love to eat for pleasure, or is there food that I like? Yes. But I eat for performance, and I eat as if my food is medicine. So when I'm either pounding blueberries or eating eggs or whatever, the foods that I consider healthy, I eat them like I'm dosing medicine, not like I'm, I don't know, yeah, I don't eat sweets or ice cream or all the stuff. And it's not that I would say you don't, like, hey, my kids eat it, and I can't tell them not to, but what it is it's just the mindset of how I do it. So, eating right is non-negotiable, because how could I put the wrong food in my body? Just like putting sugar in the gas tank of your car would not be, is not negotiable. Why would I do the same thing down my throat, right? Number 3 would be exercise. Every day in some capacity, I am physically exercising. Now, that being said, there are 4 days a week I go hard. 3 days a week I either go very light or I do nothing. So recovery is also, you could put that in there. So exercise and recovery, I guess, are a combination that I need both. Yeah. You can't train 7 days a week and kill yourself. You also can't sit on the couch 7 days a week and think you're going to be in shape, right? And then I guess I would say my 2 other non-negotiables, reading, like you mentioned before, guys, I wouldn't even just say I'm an avid reader. Here's the word I would go as far to say, I'm an addicted reader. If I have not read something or learned something new every day, I can't go to sleep to get my 8 or 9 hours. Like, I got to have it. I have books in rotation at all time. And I read thousands of books before I ever wrote one. And that's important for people to hear too, right? I heard thousands of speeches before I ever gave one. I think some people, they want to skip that step and it doesn't work. And then maybe I think if we're on 5 here, it would also be spending time in some capacity of quality with my family. So whether it's, I want to hear about what my kids did at school today, I will say this, it's become a lot easier because of the pandemic. We have dinner every night. We've had dinner every night for like 11 months. We didn't always have that. And that's why I had to force myself to make sure, hey, that door is open and I have a conversation. I check off the box. Like, did I talk to each one of my kids today? And those would be those are just major non-negotiables for me. I guess the minors would be, did I write something? Did I, what have I done for my work? Obviously in there is training for warriors and everything else too, that there's got to be something that happens every day, but all the other stuff comes second because that has to be done on the priority list. So yeah, like when it's time to work out, phones off, you can't get me. When it's time to go to bed, phones off, downstairs, shut off. I don't know. I don't think people do that much, but that is where I've stayed, where I've stuck. And I've enjoyed success as a result of that consistency over a long time. So that's the other part too. Anybody can get one night of sleep or eat a good meal. Can you do it for 30 years in a row? And that's the stuff that I pride myself on.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Yeah. I cannot thank for better lists. Last thing, and it's honestly, dude, I could have you on here for 2 solid hours, and I know man, this is, you got me fired up. So, okay, athletes, man, we gotta have fast feet. So I want you to have some fast feet here. You can pick either all 3 of these, or just pick one and expound upon it. All right. I want you to tell me about a highlight, a hero, or a hardship in your life, and then why you chose that. Right? Highlight, hero, or a hardship.
Meaning why I chose it to answer.
Yeah. So just expound upon it. Highlight, hero.
Well, it's kind of funny. I think we've hit all 3 today, but I'll go around. So obviously, big highlight recently was my daughter getting into Notre Dame, and that was a monster. I would say without a doubt. But but maybe another highlight, which is in the book, which we'll say in here, another highlight that taught me a lot, and she was the one that taught it to me. When I was working so hard and I wasn't making my family a non-negotiable, she was very small. And when she was my firstborn and I was running from thing to thing to thing, and hey, like an athlete or somebody building a business, you do sometimes have to be selfish as well to get it all done. And there was a point that my wife said, hey man, you got to start coming home for lunch. Like, she's getting bigger now. She's 2 or 3. She knows when you're not here.
Yeah. And
I would come home for lunch. And one day when I was having to leave, she said, Dad, why don't you stay more? Why don't you stay more? And I said, I can't, and she was frustrating me, cause I wanted to stay. It's just, I got to get back to work. And she said, why? And I blurted out, like, I got to get money. Like, I have to get money for us. Like, this is how we get money. And, this is a 2-year-old kid. She doesn't know what I'm talking about. And she ran away. And I didn't know why she ran away, but she ran into a room and she came back. And she had this laminated fake, like $100,000 bill. And she gave it to me and she said, is this enough money, Dad? Can you stay more here now with me? Like, is this money? And dude, it killed me, but it showed me that, there's no amount of money that like my time with my kid could be purchased for. And as I know now that he's going to be leaving in a handful of months, I see it more. And I hint at it really quick in the book. If you read the book, it's only like a split second, but it's in there. And like I said, all these things were real. So that was a highlight that showed me, hey guys, no matter how much you're working on yourself, don't forget the people around you. And that's why I'm glad that I listed that as a non-negotiable. Hero, who I dedicated this book to, I mentioned him briefly, but my junior high and high school track and field coach, who still I'm in touch with today. He still writes on every one of my posts. This guy, man, he saved me. He found me at a dark time in my life. And you know what he said? Something real simple. And it's in the book. That whole story is in the book. And I didn't make baseball, and we were leaving the tryouts, and he was there, and he said, "Hey kid, I think you'd be great at this."
Yeah.
And nobody told me nobody was telling me I could be good at anything. And I didn't feel that way. And that little word, that courage of that guy standing out there about a sport he was passionate about, talking to kids he didn't know, the amount of courage that I see now that took is incredible. So he is a hero for me. And many of the lessons that are in that book are the ones that he taught me as a coach, and that I was able to distill them out and kind of put them on paper. So his name is Bill Scarola. And, he was the greatest coach I ever had. Right. And then, so what was it? Highlight, hero, and what was the last one?
Hardship.
Oh, hardship. I would say hardship, man. Right. Right now it's now like the greatest hardship. I've had a lot of them, but dude, it's right now. And with the challenges that my business is experiencing and what took me 20 years to build, to watch it, a lot of it get decimated. It has, dude, I have pushed myself and done a lot of soul searching and it has taught me who I am and given me strength. So what has the hardship taught me? That I am not going to be defined by this challenge, and we're going to get through it. And it's taught me who I am, and that I know I'll always have value regardless if things out of my control have, been taken away from me. Right. And so I think that's one, you hear it a lot, control the controllables. And man, it sounds so easy. That might be one of the hardest Zen things you can ever try to pull off. Right. Like that. And, but I have spent a lot of time over the last 10 months of, hey, what can I control? And can I just let go of when something happens that I can't? And that this pandemic has been the greatest hardship, because it's taking away that love of helping all these other people out there. And I can't, and you can't do anything about it. Right. So it's a challenge. So those would be my three. I hope those were some fast beat.
Yeah. Excellent. So yeah. And I have literally repeated, like, sometimes even out loud to myself during this quarantine COVID time, control the controllables, trying to focus on what I can do and not worried about the things that I can't, not expending emotional energy or mental energy on those things. So Coach, man, you are an inspirational human being overall. Thank you. Yeah, seriously. And thank you so much for sharing. Where can we find you and follow you on social media, and not just you, but also Training for Warriors and those things?
Yeah. So, hey, and it was my pleasure today. And so where you can find me, hey guys, I'm on Instagram at the Martin Rooney, and I'm always sharing stuff. So you'll see like stuff from my athletes, my family, all different things up there. Martin Rooney on Facebook. And hey, if you want to find out more about Training for Warriors, you can go to trainingforwarriors.com. And then there is also coachinggreatness.com. And you'll see stuff about coaching and the book and and I've got a bunch of different online courses and different things. So if you enjoyed this hour, man, I've got stuff with 20, 30, 40, 50 hours of incredibly rich content for people to go through. So, it's all out there. And there's a YouTube channel for all the wrestlers out there. If you want to see some crazy times when I'm with Frankie Edgar and all the wrestling guys, and we're doing some pretty crazy feats of strength, you can see some of that stuff too. People often like that one. And so those would be the places to find me. And hey, if you enjoyed this one, let Coach P know about it. So, somehow maybe he brings me on again, but hopefully you got some good takeaways, and that today it pushed you maybe to decide on some of your non-negotiables, or what you're going to try to control or not. And then I will know I did my job as a coach. So my pleasure today.
Yes, sir. So, and I will make sure that I put all those links in the show notes so everybody can jump on there and find you. And let me one more time before we close out, just say, if you are a reader, if you know a reader, like I said, if you're a coach, a parent, businessman, go grab Coach to Coach. Coach Rooney's written other great books as well, but that's his newest one, Coach to Coach, and it is phenomenal. So again, thank you so much, Coach. I'm honored to have you on, and I appreciate you.
Hey, happy holidays.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody listen, this has been another episode of Coach P's Perspective. May God bless you, shine his face upon you, and give you peace. Till next time, we're out.